All right. Hello, gang. Hello, everyone there. Let's just turn down the music. Got some nice Andrew Apple Pie playing. And yeah, we're going to get this party started. Cool, fantastic. All right, so we will wait for people to trickle in, but welcome. All right, just double checking this. All right, cool. Hey guys, what's going on? I can't see people's names like I can on Facebook and other places, but I trust people are doing well. You guys doing well? You guys doing all right? I'm just saying welcome. Is anyone out there? I need somebody to talk to because I'm way too social. There we are. Okay, just took a second for chat to load in, but I see you guys now. All right, so let's just pop out this chat and get this party started. So I want to talk about presentations, and maybe I'll change this track. Sorry, Andrew. Not crazy about that song. All right, so we're going to dive into pro tips for making beautiful presentations right now because we can. Honestly, because we've all sat through horrible presentations, right? I'm sure you've been there. Serge, what's up, buddy? Tracy, Paul Rodriguez. Awesome, man. Douglas. Hello, Sandria. Good. Okay, cool. So yeah, this is what I want to talk about. You know, again, pro tips for making beautiful presentations, and these are just like designer tips that you'd be surprised how often we don't remember these things. I'm going to be using PowerPoint. You can also, you know, use Keynote or whatever, but I'm going to stick with PowerPoint because it's probably the biggest name in the game. And yeah, so we are going to dive into this. I'm going to talk about some basic sort of fundamental tips, and I have PowerPoint open now on my other screen. All right, so give me 1 second. I'm going to switch over to it now. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Serge, it's good to see you, man. Where are you from? Serge Sakal. That's not a name that I see a lot here in Colorado, of all places. Speaking of Colorado, it's funny that this is the image that I'm starting with because this is a very you know, this actually looks like California. This looks like the Bay Area almost. I don't know, because honestly, we don't have fog in Colorado, but we are gonna make it beautiful. That's the plan. So we're gonna design gorgeous presentations that people pay attention to. Because at the end of the day, that's what we need to do. All right. Does that sound good, Serge? Let's dive into this. I already have some gorgeous images in here, as you can see. And I'm going to dive into sort of like designing slides just at the outset, right? So let me just move this over. All right, cool. You know, designing slides or even designing the various sections. So that's how you break it down. It's typically you'll have like Notepad open and you'll start to formulate all your different ideas, right? I'm not talking about the content. I'm talking about the design in that content. But when you're designing the, you know, sections, you know, how should you put those sections together? Okay, so typically you want to break that stuff up. So you want to organize sections potentially by image. Obviously, I have an image in the background and I want to actually continue that image through. So notice how I have this header image and then I just continue it to the next slide, right? So that's all I do is make it semi-transparent. So we know that we're in that same section, okay? And then I can also obviously organize by color, right? So establishing color will determine this subject matter. So we're going to talk about subject matter A, which is blue. Subject matter B is going to be, you know, purple. You get the idea, right? Or you do it by both. So I'm actually going to kind of dive into this just so you guys kind of are familiar. Let me just delete that image because you're probably wondering, like, where the heck do I get good images? And honestly, good images are most of it because let's face it, I can jump into PowerPoint and stuff like that. And the stuff I have access to in here, I'm not crazy about. Look, let's go to design. We have all these crazy templates. And honestly, I'll do file, new presentation. Let's get into, I want to actually show off new from template, right? Any of these, look at some of these. And you know, you could pick one of these, that's fine, but chances are you're going to need to customize this. I do like how they do organize information, but if I open up, say, for instance, I don't know, this Eon boardroom actually looks the best. Okay, so you could see it right in here, and if I view the slide master, here it is. You could already see, this is kind of part of the problem, by the way, is like, look at how much content is here, right? I love how this is organized by color, but they're like expecting you to have what? A fifth level of bullet points, potentially? Not so much, right? So I said I wasn't going to get into content, but I'm already getting into content because you notice as I start to dive into this, it really is just one subject per slide because we don't do a good job of reading and then listening at the same time, right? If you give them a paragraph, people are going to start reading that paragraph and not listen to you if you're presenting this, right? So again, that's like, I have like one thought per slide, okay? I need to emphasize this point about images. So here's where I want to talk about, you know, travel in Rome, for instance, right? Of course, I'm not going to do that with a blank screen. I'm going to grab some images. I don't happen to have any images of Rome. Okay, wish I lived there. But I do want to point out what you can actually add in. So I'm going to go into Addins right in here, store, right? Launching that. And there's actually a store available to you, Paul. Did you know this, my friend? Let me refresh chat here. Here we go. Zoop. But you could actually, you know, access images through add-ins, right? So this is what I do. Okay, so sorry it took a second just for the chat was not refreshing for me. There we go. Ryan Ford's in the house. Okay, so but this is where I actually get images. So I can pick a couple in here. I actually have an Adobe Stock membership, so I encourage you to use the Adobe. And this is brand new. This is kind of why I'm talking about this today. Adobe Stock, right? I can search Adobe Stock and add that into PowerPoint, right? So this makes it really easy. We'll see it load in here in a second, but this is really nice. I don't need to jump out to anywhere else. It actually recognizes me since I'm already a Creative Cloud member. And then I can jump in here and I can say, you know, let's go to, say, let's just type in Rome, for instance, right? And access, you know, Rome or travel images, right? So here we get all these gorgeous images. Like, this is perfect. This is what I want. Things are looking gorgeous. Has anybody been to Rome, or is anybody from Rome that's on the chat? I'm kind of curious. Tracy, what's up? Have you been to Rome? Anyone? Anyone? Right, let's take, for instance, this image. This looks pretty good. First off, I can preview it if I want to. So preview in PowerPoint. And it says, hey, I can go to my history and view them all, but I can preview it right away. And look at how fast that is. Done and done. So I can say, hey, I might want to use this. Okay. And you also have the ability to license it. So that's actually what I want to do. I'm actually going to license and preview this, license it and use it directly in PowerPoint. Clicking yes. It says, hey, you know what? Don't worry. It's going to put it right here. It's okay, Paul. And it will also appear in your history. So that's what I'm doing. Jet WF, what's up? Midnight, where are you from? I haven't scrolled up, but wow. All right. Quila. Let's refresh this. Let me take a drink of my... It looks like I'm drinking dirt, but this is actually an iced coffee with cinnamon. Nice. All right, here we are. Oh, Tom, you've been to Rome? Yeah, or you have Rome on your bucket list? Excuse you. Nikon, you've been to Rome, huh? Man, that's so cool. Paul's been there. Awesome. I think everybody should go there once in their life. My boss is actually from Italy, so Florence. I'm hoping that we have a team offsite there someday, right? He's actually in, yeah, Florence. So go to see this. I can drop this in. So this would become the theme for this section. So whether it's travel or travel in Rome, or it's subject A. So subject A uses this image through that section. But let's dive into this a little bit more, right? You guys get it. Boom. I'm just showing you how this works. Boom. Right? Imagery. Of course, we want to use imagery any chance we can get. Here's just another one, right? Just dropped it in there. Okay. And what's going to happen is you might find images, and typically you'll use these images as background images when you're doing a presentation, right? This one worked out okay. You know what? Since through Adobe Stock, look at how large this image is, by the way. These are pretty big images. So I can stretch this out any way I want. So I can take this and do this, of course, do this kind of jazz, something like that. Because this thing is so large, I can still kind of get a nice layout and still have this text as black, for instance. So that's what I would do is I'd, make it look really large. And even from there, I can, we need to talk about color as well. But even as we go to the next point that I make, I could still use the same image, but just adjust its position or use a different part. So we're still talking about that same subject matter, but a different aspect of it. So that's where I'd, potentially move this over and do something different with it, right? So we could use imagery, right? It's not always going to work out. Maybe you want to scale it up. You could also blur the background. I want to dive into some of these artistic effects. Help us all, right? I'm going to click right here. Let's see if you guys can see that. This is popping out. So let me move this. Let me move this off to the side. Yeah, I'm curious as to what's on your bucket list, huh? Place on my bucket list. I would like to go to Petra. I've not been to Petra, and I'd love to go to Madagascar, and I'd love to go down to like Guatemala and like Central America personally, because that's a quick trip for me. Denmark in the house. Okay, Jackson, you're in Nairobi. Wow, in Kenya, and it's 1 in the morning. You are my friend. Man, thanks so much for joining us today. Rob wins. You're hilarious, buddy. Puns. Right? So, okay, so this is the thing. You're going to drop in an image and be like, hey, you could do all these cool artistic effects. Help us all. Have you guys ever explored any of these, by the way? Let's make this a little larger. I'm actually waiting for some to load, but there actually is a blur in here. I do wish they were labeled, but I think it's this one right here. No, crisscross etching. Hold on. I'm looking for it. I know it's hard to tell. Oh, there we are. Blur, obviously. Boom. All right, so that's what I do is I take an image, and maybe it's my big header image for that section, and then I'll blur it out. I'll either increase the size or blur it out to make something more interesting. So I'm already blurring it out, and that focuses attention, of course, on the text, right? So that's what I'd want to do is like still take that large image, blur it out. In fact, if I give this a really extreme radius, we'll give it a second because, again, this is a large image that I can crop, by the way. So this actually starts to look obviously like much better as I start to blur this out more and more. The nice thing is it still stays within that same color palette, right? For this subject matter. Right? 1 point per slide. I'm using a gorgeous image that I've gotten off of Adobe Stock. I can blur it out and it makes it look even better, which I like, right? And then I can kind of move on from there. I'm sorry, guys, but this is actually a point I had. It says, like, honestly, it's very mean of me to say don't use stupid effects, but because there are no stupid effects. There's just effects that are not being used appropriately. And I will say a lot of these effects are in the minority when it comes to using them, right? So if I'm talking about painting, yeah, it's appropriate if I use marker or some painting or texturizer to cross hatching whatever like effect on a photo if I'm talking about painting. But otherwise, it's just going to distract or it's going to break from my subject matter, right? So just don't use these effects unless you're doing it with purpose. And I will 100% say that don't even use color unless it actually has a purpose as well, right? Don't use color just to decorate a screen. That's the last thing you want to do. So I can't wait till I get into color, right? We need to freaking do things with purpose. That's what we do as designers, right? Can I get an amen? Let me refresh chat. Sorry, chat is not refreshing for me at all. I think most of this stuff, Puerto Rico in the house. What's up, buddy? So, honestly, it's more about what not to do than what to do, right? Because what am I not using? I'm not using the templates, right? I'm not using any of these. I'm not going down to the 5th level for bullet points. I'm not using this big swooshy thing. What does that have to do with anything, right? What does that have to do with anything? Unless it's part of the logo and I'm emphasizing the brand, right? I'm just like not going to use that. Same thing for word art. So use effects with purpose, right? Sure, I could jump in here and I can apply word art to an element, but what's the purpose of applying that word art? It's just to make something look fancy. If you're decorating text, it means probably you feel the need to add excitement when you really need to focus on the content. Maybe the content isn't really that interesting and you're trying to make up for it with fancy slides. And I've been there. I'm like the worst offender of like, let's throw some flashy graphics at the screen and maybe they'll realize that that I'm missing some content or there's some holes in it. Right? Use imagery in fun ways, guys. So you can I just encourage you to. So I can still use this imagery in fun ways with a purpose. So I could still be talking about travel. I'll just duplicate this image and flip it upside down just for fun. Why not, huh? Right? And now I have 2 images that I can deal with, and I'm just going to do this kind of cool flip effect, as I thought that'd be kind of fun. Send to back. Right, what's wrong with this? What's wrong with this image? Do you guys know Machuki? Good to have you here from Puerto Rico. Guess what? My brother is there right now. He's in Punta Cana, Puerto Rico right now. Yeah, and then he's going to show up here on Sunday. So I get to see my younger brother and his wife and 5 kids. So I'm super excited about that. Okay, I haven't gotten into color yet, but when I use color, I use it with a purpose, and usually I'll take it from an image, because the problem with this right now, this is designer stuff 101, right? This text is pure black, and there's no other pure black on the page. So that's when I'd actually use a different color. And I'd actually go into more of a gray here, because there's more grays here, and that ties this in. That's why this isn't so stark, okay? Yeah, and why do I use a picture illustration? I'm going to drive, people are going to remember images more than they're going to remember a paragraph of text, but in general, usually a picture or illustration is worth 1,000 words. By the way, so again, if I go in here, I just did a search for Rome, but I can do, Italy, right? We can do all of Italy. And not only am I doing all of Italy in pictures, but I also can focus on illustrations for Italy. So that's kind of what I'm searching on right now, right? That's what I'm talking about, some of this stuff. This stuff is fun. So if I need that graphic, I can drop it in. You guys get the idea. Here it is. Boom. Ooh, this is perfect. This is exactly kind of like what I would like. Let's license that and add it to PowerPoint right now. And drop it in. Paul Rodriguez, my friend. What's up, guys? Oh, thank you so much, Nathaniel. Exactly. Dropping the opacity. Yes. So, Nathaniel, this is my 2 cents on dropping the opacity. Yes, drop the opacity. If it's a dark image, so let me just scroll down here, because this is a good case in point where you drop the opacity, because, right, I need to be able to read this text. So I can select the background, and this is where I'd actually drop the opacity on this guy. Sure, I could blur it out, but the reason I do it here, let me just change the background color, because the background color looks like it's white. Right? I'm going to drop the opacity. Basically, I'm making this image darker since the background is black, right? So that's when I do that. Anytime you do it with a light image, all that happens is it just gets muddy, right? So if I took this and dropped the opacity of this image, it just makes it look kind of muddy and ugly, right? This isn't as pretty. See how it's like, ugh, a little getting ugly, gross colors, when in actuality, I would just want to blur it out. So blur if it's bright, drop the opacity if it's dark, okay? And I need to talk about color still, but let's get into typography as we've gotten into that, right? So why did I do this? Why did I make that background, adjust the transparency? Great job, Nathaniel, by the way. Obviously, so I could read the text, right? So super simple, right? And this is again, designing 101 basically, but it's like it's all fundamentals. That's what I love about what we do. It's like the fundamentals don't change, it's just the output or the technology that might change. Right? So what do you want to do? You probably don't want to use more than 3 fonts. Preferably like use straight up one font. I will jump in and use Helvetica New till you're blue in the face, right? I probably use it way too much, right? That's what's on here this whole time is Helvetica New. So don't use more than 3 fonts, preferably one. That's like all I have in here. This is Helvetica New. If I want to make this stand out, preferably one. You know, literally, yes, you could do bold, but look at how many different versions. I actually have another Helvetica New, but there's plenty of different versions. So I typically use one font that has lots of different weights. Okay, so that's what I'll end up using. And to be honest with you, I love slab serifs too, by the way. So I might mix it with the slab serif. You guys get the idea. But you don't always have to constantly like swap out the font to add emphasis. And that's what I think people do is like people add a font to add emphasis. And you don't need to do that because I wouldn't want to do like alpha slab, boom. Like that doesn't have, it's not continuous. It didn't read as a continuous sentence. But what I can do is just like add a color. So I can add a nice, in this case, a nice, what color would you call that? Like a washed out yellow. I'm sure somebody has a fancy name for it. Washed out yellow? Too many words. Okay, cool. All right, sweet. Yeah, Mark. And I hate to sound like, honestly, I haven't even watched the Helvetica movie. Mark, have you watched the Helvetica movie? I haven't seen it. Like, I'm not so into Helvetica that I will like watch the movie. Like I'm in like, I agree with this quote, which I have right in here, by the way. And I forgot who said I should check my references, but it's something that I always remember when I start to pick out fonts, is that like typography has one job, and that's to convey information in writing, right? And I think this is another quote. I'm sure somebody else has said it, but this is what I keep in mind, right? It's like if a font is attracting too much attention to itself, then it's too much. So if you notice the font, it's probably too much. You shouldn't notice the font. You should notice the content, right? The font should always underline the content, right? It's just the same way the image in the background emphasizes the content since we're talking about typography, right? So it's all this cohesive message that we're bringing together. We're not going to use a watercolor filter on something when we're talking about technology. Just please don't do that, right? You get that whole idea, right? Is this boring? I'm still curious as to your favorite font, by the way. Your guys' favorite font. Because I will say I love slab fonts. I will tell you how I get my favorite fonts. Let me just do this a couple times real fast. Doot, doot. First of all, I can see all the images that I've used, by the way. So I have this image. I'll have to drop that in a second. I'll have to show you fonts, and we'll have to look at picking colors because we could do so many cool things so fast, right? So we'll use this image right in here. Picture's worth 1,000 words. Dropping that in, maybe with some new text. I would love to design something entirely new, right? So let's be a member of the tourism board for Italy. Right. Here's the image. That's done. So again, this might be something I want to use because yes, picture's worth 1,000 words. Changing this background. Wait for it. Wait for it. Wait for it. Let me show you one more thing. Let me send to back, right? Send to back. Boom. Again, this is still kind of boring, right? So I still want to adjust this. Okay, so this illustration that I got from Adobe Stock, let's just go ahead and, decrease the opacity there. I could do a splash of color, but by the way, do you guys do this? As also, I'll just like add a shape. Let's just add a big rectangle. Right? And I'll change this to a gradient fill set with like these tones, and these tones aren't even that great. Let's go ahead and work on these colors a little bit. Let's get some pink in there, huh? Crank that up. Why not? This is like okay at best. I get it. It's too bright. But all I'm saying is what I would end up doing is I will use this on an image, like to add a splash of color. Even for, say for instance, you know, this first image right here, right? So what's happening here is there's actually this splash of color that I added to this just to make it look a little unique, right? So if I paste that one in here, you can see that's all I'm doing, just like giving it a splash of color over a photo or an illustration just to, you know, really to have it tie in with maybe the rest of the design, right? I wouldn't add color just to add color. I already have too much of a gradient here, so don't judge me. I really need to desperately change this before you guys hate me, because it should be like the smoothest transition ever. When it comes to anytime you're doing a gradient these days, you can make it look 80s if you're doing too much of a transition between colors, right? So we just want to do a blue to a teal is what you typically do when you do transparency and gradients and stuff like that, right? So that's all you'd do if you're doing a tint. You guys get the idea. I'm getting too artsy on you. Right on. Hi, Rare Shadow. It's nice to see Rare Shadow here. Good to see you, Rare Shadow. Getting rid of that line. You guys get the idea. I need to move on from this, right? So adding that color cast, right? Just like I did up here, right? Just like that. Notice I still have my images. If there's more editing that I want to do with this or any of them, I can go to all the images that I've downloaded, by the way. So I'll go back into history right here. We'll see all my images that I've downloaded. I can then grab any one of these. Say, for instance, let's get this one right here, right? I click on it. I can see it right here. I can add this at any time to any PowerPoint. So again, that's how I can find what I've used, and that's how I can add it to PowerPoint as well, just by obviously clicking on the Add to PowerPoint. You guys didn't even need me here to tell you that. Yes, the answer is PowerPoint does have a plugin from Adobe. It is, if you go up to Insert, Add-ins, to Store, right? And that's where you'll find Adobe Stock. That's how I do it, right? Search for it. There it is, right? Added it already, and then it adds it to the side. I'm going to go ahead and post to the chat just a link on how all this stuff goes down. To Adobe Stock. There you go. There's a link to the Adobe Stock category and all that fun stuff. So once I have this image again, I could take this, I could bring it into Photoshop because I probably want to like add more to it. Look, I already pasted it in there. There it is. We get it, right? And I can do that razzmatazz to it because, right, quite frankly, I still might want to do a color splash, right? One thing PowerPoint doesn't have is PowerPoint doesn't have layer modes. So maybe I want to change this to overlay, which I knew was going to be too much, or soft light or something like that. So this actually has more style than maybe that. Or maybe I want to, this is a case where maybe I'd want to tie in maybe the company color in with the images. So that's how I would do that, is give it that nice color cast. And let's just do another transition of a gradient, right? I'm just adding those two colors together. I could do a copy merged and bring that into, and again, that's why I'd do that, is I'd do that to use the layer modes. And going from there to there. Boom. Boom. Right? You guys get the idea. Okay, so let's move on. We can talk about colors. I wanted to show fonts really fast, and we will wrap this up. So let's just send this to the back. Boom. I can still crop it and then do all that stuff. So anytime I pull down an image, I can format that picture all day long. Okay, so we have the ability to crop and then get into some of these other controls. So this is where I was talking about, well, there really isn't a, you can't put a color cast over something. It's going to work for the whole image, right? That's what's going to happen here with these presets. Okay, so it's going to give it a tone. It's going to shift the temperature in this case, or the saturation. You know, there's so much more I can do in Photoshop. That's how I end up with it in Photoshop. And you get the idea. So let's move on. I wanted to talk about fonts and colors and get that squared away. And yeah, then we will let you guys go. So that makes it super easy. Again, Adobe Stock, super easy. Just a couple of other things you need to be aware of, because again, once you're like a Creative Cloud member, it's like super easy. I actually use Typekit when it comes to fonts as well. So Typekit just gives me access to a ton of web and desktop fonts. And not only that, but they're type professionals, which I like, right? So I can obviously search Typekit. But I'm going to click on fonts right up here at the top. And this is how I usually like to do this. So again, you're not going to remember everything about fonts. I could come in here and say, hey, you know, I'm going to make a PowerPoint presentation. What do I want for my headings? Show me a good heading font, right? These are going to be the fonts that have a little bit more character and might be a little more unique. Like this one. I use Helvetica New Thin all the time, but this font right here is much more interesting than Helvetica New Thin. So I might consider using this. And since it's a sans serif, I could still pair it with a sans serif or a serif font, right? So, yeah, muertos. Mr. Eves, there it is. Let's syncing Mr. Eves sans, all 16 fonts. And I'll have that ready to go. I can always manage those fonts. You guys get the idea. That's what I use Typekit for. I use it to sort through my fonts to find good fonts. I think, honestly, we're just a step away from pairing fonts, because I really wish this had the, like, because basically my X height of my letters, those should always, like, be the same height. So that's one way to, like, pair fonts, right? And you can still, you know, pair decorative fonts with, you know, pretty standard fonts. I'll also typically come in here and say, hey, you know, find me a font that has, you know, 3 different weights. I should be able to do that. Why is this not actually doing that? But that's what I'd do, is I'd try to find a font that has as many weights as possible, which is why I'm glad the Mr. Eves or whatever font has like 16 different fonts. But that's what I'd use there. Last thing I'm going to do is go to color.adobe.com. I'm going to do 2 things real fast. Let's go to stock.adobe.com. Right? Even for my images, if I happen to have an image and I want to find one that's similar, by the way, if you're making a presentation, I'm kind of ending up all over the place. But if I'm working on a presentation and I want to, you know, maybe I want it to be generic and I want to use a generic image, because this is what I'll do, is I'll use a lot of these bokeh images. So this is a bokeh image, right? So this is like an image that has these various gradients. So I'm like, okay, let's not get into specifics, but let's make something more interesting than a standard gradient, right? So tired of gradients. So I happen to have this like bokeh image, but I need more of them, right? So I can drag that right in here to Adobe Stock, and I can search on different nice backgrounds to use as part of my presentations, right? So this is going to be much more interesting than a straight gradient, obviously what you can see here. And again, do what I want with it, preview it, save it, all that jazz. Let's refresh. Don't know why chat is not refreshing for me, and I'm sorry. All right, so done and done. I can search. I can actually go out to Adobe Stock and do so much more as well. So if I wanted to search on an image in Adobe Stock, here's a different image. Same process. This does the same thing, but you know, once you're logged in, obviously you're going to have all those capabilities for searching on an image. And not only that, you can do so much more, because there the searches can be much more advanced. So let's do Italy again. You ready for this? Italy, boom. Images, yes. Filter it out, yes. Let's give this depth of field a whirl, right? Let's look for images with more of a blur, right? Italy images with more of a blur. This is perfect, right? The reason I want to do this is this is really good. Like, since the image is background, since I can add this creative filter, the depth of field, I can put text over the blurred area and then still have the focus of like her in frame and all that good stuff, right? So again, that's one thing you can do, save a preview, is going to do the obvious, save a preview of it using this fancy filter. But otherwise I could do like horizontal images. Again, your presentation could be horizontal. You could tag it with a bunch of different colors. So if you are kind of, okay, the branding is red, then show me all the red images from Adobe Stock to use as part of my presentation. That is really cool, by the way. Look, I did depth of field. Let's do more blur, and let's give it a pink tint for Italy. And it's looks like it's giving me those. The depth of field is in beta, so it's you know, it probably thinks that this color cast is a blur, but not bad. Right on. With this, you will be better in school. That sounds awesome, because you should be better in school. Like, stay in school, kids. Yeah, Mark. Exactly. And the funny thing, Mark, about that is that, like, that's exactly what's in all of these templates. Like, it's no surprise that people are adding bullet points. Like, I can't really fault them for it, because that's what's in all of these templates, right? There just needs to be a clean template. I have never in my 20 years of doing presentations every year or everywhere, all the time, never used all of these. What's the first thing I do? I come in here, delete, 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 delete. I find this one. Even if we look at this one that I'm working on, what about this one that I'm working on, even to show this? If we view, you guys are gonna know, it's like, it shouldn't be exciting, right? This shouldn't be exciting. Look, there's more than there needs to be, but I'm basically using like this one and this one. I'm using these two. So I could probably delete this one and delete that one. But this is much shorter than what I had otherwise. Okay, so we could talk more. We could talk all day long more about, you know, what you can do in terms of presentations. I think we should continue this conversation, quite frankly, because it's like important to me, and I think it's important to you guys to know how to pick colors and how to pick fonts and how to make compelling presentations. Last thing I'm doing right now, by the way, if you are picking out colors, by the way, super cool. Remember, I just dragged that image into Adobe Stock to, you know, find that image or similar images. Well, check this out. I could do the same thing. Watch this. So sure, I could pick colors. So I'm on color.adobe.com, and I can pick colors that are always going to be analogous in this case, or monochromatic. A lot of times you'll do complementary. I know these are complementary. This is great, right? What if I have an image and I want to pick colors based on those images? Well, I can do that as well. Let's just kind of minimize that stuff. Here again is my image, right? It's just this one. It's a taupey image, but I can drop this. Actually, I could click this button. I can't drop it. Create from image, clicking right there, go into my desktop, finding that image. Here's the image, by the way. Zoop. And this is how I'd pick my colors potentially based on that image or based on some brand, right? And I can still tweak it, but this gives me a good starting point. Like for the bright color, I want to make sure that, you know, this one is pretty bright, and that's what my bright, some of those bright colors will be for. So that's what I do. You know, save that, my color theme. It's going to be available in all of the apps for me, the desktop apps. But the good thing is, once I come in here, you know, I can still see what these colors are. So this base color or this bright color can be this hex color. So that's where I can grab that color and feed it into PowerPoint to make sure it ties together with my image, right? Because if there's not this stark black in this image, I want to probably pick something that's in accordance with my image here. Oh, another way to do that, by the way, guys, really fast, and then I will let you go, is right down here, you can actually pick the color from, say, the background. But this just doesn't give you a complete palette is all. Click. There it is. All right, cool, guys. I'm going to let you guys go. Hopefully you guys had a good time. I liked talking to you guys. And don't forget about this Adobe Stock plugin. Excuse me. It's not a plugin, by the way. Don't say that. It's an add-in. And you can get it from their store and all that good stuff. Yeah, you know what, Ada? The good thing about the horrible PowerPoints is they make our PowerPoints look good, okay? That's kind of nice. Oh, another thing we have not talked about. Well, let's talk about this. Oh, I could talk about this all day long. Is what about transitions and things like that? What about any sort of animation? What about if you do need to display like information as in graphs and things, like what do you do? Short answer of that stuff is don't use transitions unless they have a purpose, right? So I literally will just do a fade or a cut. And secondarily, information, you want to turn that more into like an infographic if you can. So gone are the days of pie charts. It's going to be more of an infographic that's relevant to the content. So, you know, that's my 2 cents there. Thank you guys so much for watching. Appreciate you guys hanging out with me. We're going to do a contest tomorrow. More about that later, but we're doing an Adobe Stock. There's Adobe Stock contest that's been happening. And yes, so for that contest, we're going to reveal the winners. So check that out tomorrow. That should be around 11 a.m. And yeah, we'll be giving away, here it is. We'll be giving away basically Creative Cloud, the hovering art director, because it's part of that competition, and Adobe Stock, iPad Pro, Apple Pencil, all sorts of fun things. So that's going to be a contest. You'll get to see everybody who entered into this contest, and we'll pick like 10 winners and give away some stuff, so it should be fun. That's all I got for you guys. Have a wonderful day. Appreciate you. Be nice to one another, and go create cool stuff, huh? Thanks for watching.